Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Chris Martin, one of our Director of Automation here at Alpha. Chris does a lot of other roles too, including working with Alpha Launch, and he works with a lot of mobile applications. And in fact, something he'll be showing you, or we will both be showing you today, will be something that he's worked on involving NFC, also known as near field communications. We're also here to answer your questions. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel or into the chat window of the GoToWebinar control panel, depending on your interface. Before I get started, I always like to do a quick AV check. So you can see in here, thank you, way ahead of me. So great, it looks like we are all set. So let's talk today about NFC. I'm going to go ahead and make this slideshow go full screen. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Hold on a second. Let me scroll down here to where we're supposed to be, which is slide number 43. Here we go. I'm going to play from this slide. All right. So NFC, near field communications, is a way of exchanging data over a radio signal. And we're going to go ahead and talk about that today. Let me go ahead and move on to the next slide. So if you could imagine, for example, you've got boxes in a warehouse and you have noted everything that you've placed into the box. On the outside of the box, you might place an NFC tag, like as a sticker, for example, in a box, and then program that tag with a GUID so that later on, when you scan that tag, you can look up and see what is inside the box. That is one application for NFCs and one that we're going to be showing to you today. But NFCs are used in a lot of other types of applications. And one I didn't actually put up here on the list, of course, is payment processing. If you think about tap to pay, Apple Pay, or tapping your credit card at a POS, that's all an example of near field communications. Also, other examples include time clocks. So you might have an ID card that you swipe in to get access control that also logs your time clock, so you know when you've entered or exited a building. You might have inventory, like I showed you in the last example, or maybe asset identification. You've got a piece of equipment or something like that. You want to be able to just tap on it and find out information about that equipment. You can do all of that with NFC communication. So let's move down to our next slide. What does that have to do with Alpha? Well, Alpha, in fact, does support near field communication in Alpha Anywhere, and we're actually looking at adding that feature into Alpha Transform in coming iterations. With NFC, NFC is available as a Cordova plugin. So in other words, if you are building an application in Alpha Anywhere, that's a mobile application meant to be installed on an Android or iOS device, you'd use that using Cordova in Alpha Anywhere. And one of the plugins you can use is the NFC plugin. We'll be talking about a little bit about that plugin today, but I wanted to give you really a background as to what NFC is and sort of some of the basics that you're going to need if you want to start adding NFCs into your own application. So let's start at the beginning. This is what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the difference between NFC and a very related technology. Actually, NFC is a subset of RFID, also known as radio frequency identification. If you have, maybe you've got something on your car when you drive through tolls, it automatically charges you. If you live in a state that does that, we do that here in Massachusetts. We'll be talking about near field communication. I've got everything spelled wrong on that slide. Sorry about that. I got to fix that. It's going to drive me crazy. But anyway, we're going to be talking about near field communication tags and the different form factors they come in. We'll be talking about the near field communication format. And I say the in quotation marks because there are, in fact, multiple formats, but there's one in particular that's called NDEF, which is the one that we're going to use. And then we're going to be talking about NFC software as well. So let me go back and play from here. Current slide. So RFD and NFC RFD, if you go to a typical retail establishment like a drugstore or a hardware store, something like that, you will see examples of both technologies being used. For RFID, they're typically being used, say, in the security gates. So when you walk through the gate, it checks to see whether or not you have a piece of merchandise with a code that still says that it is active on that code. And that sort of lets them know whether or not it's been checked through appropriately, or maybe if you're trying to make off with it, it'll catch you. And RFID is great. It works over, it can work over a couple of feet. It can work actually even a little bit further. For example, if you are driving your car underneath an RFID reader, you'll know that that can actually be, 20, 30 feet away. NFC, on the other hand, also communicates over radio waves, but its range is much, much smaller. It's used, say, for credit card processing, and that kind of makes sense. You don't want to broadcast your credit card information to everyone in the whole room. You want it to only be communicated to the thing that you are specifically tapping on. So that makes it actually a little bit more secure, and it lets you know exactly what you are scanning. So an RFID is sort of more of a crapshoot. It looks at a lot of stuff at the same time. NFC can be very specific. So NFC tags come in a variety of form factors. We have got, you can do them as stickers, you can do them as business cards, for example, you can do them as lanyards, you can do them here as these tokens or key rings or whatever. They're very small. They can be attached everywhere. In fact, these three pictures I pulled right off of Amazon.com because these are all things that are for sale. They aren't very expensive. I think this was the most expensive, where a 10-pack of these sort of RFID tags probably ran around 10 bucks, but these stickers are pennies basically. So when you are using an RFID tag, you're going to be writing to it using a specific format called the NDEF format, which stands for the NFC Data Exchange Format. This is a standard, and it's a standard that can be used by iOS, Android, and a lot of other readers and writers. In fact, iOS can only use the NDEF standard. It does not allow you to use other standards. It does not let you write raw data to and from the tags. So that's a great reason actually to stick with NDEF. Most of the tags that you're going to see for sale are in fact NDEF tags, so they're really easy to find. And the NDEF format, basically how it's read, is used for encoding either URLs, so that it'll pop up a website when you scan it, or text strings, like for example a GUID, like we used in the inventory example, V cards, which are kind of like business cards or personal cards, where you can tap on it and transfer your name, email address, job title, and things like that, all with a click. It could also be used for launching applications. This is sometimes known as deep linking, where you can have it open up a specific application. And they're also used for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth handshakes. An example of that would be, say, in a waiting room, you might say something, tap here to attach to our local Wi-Fi. So that's one of the things that you could do with these tags. When you're getting this type of NDEF tag, there are a couple of different models available. The ones that you're going to be interested in are going to be the NTAG 213, the 215, or the 216. These each use the MDEF standard, very readily available pretty much any place they sell these tags. The difference is between the three is the amount of data that you can store on the tag. So the NTAG 213 is the cheapest one, and it goes for the least expensive, I should say, and it has a 144 byte limit that you could store in it, which is plenty for a GUID. For other things, like if you were doing V cards and stuff, you can go to 500 bytes, 888 bytes. There are other ones that don't follow these standards that can hold even more information. In fact, the ones that are used for like on subway cards or even credit cards use a different standard than that, and they can actually hold more information. But 144 is fine, for example, for if you're just using it as a linking key, as like a GUID in a database, like we were talking about here in our example. So we've talked about the tags, and we've talked about the readers and writers, which are basically your cell phone. And we've talked about the standards. Oh, one last little thing I just want to point out in this slide because I had forgotten, it's kind of neat, is that NFCs can be locked. You can actually write to an NFC tag and say, please don't let anyone write after this one. In other words, you've set a flag on it that says no more reading and writing is possible, which is an interesting way of adding security. On the other hand, you may choose not to do that, and you may want to have your NFC tags be updatable. That's up to you, and it depends on the situation. So how do you actually talk to, how do you use your software to talk to the reader and writer? How do you write the software for doing NFC? Well, we do that using a Cordova plugin, and it is called Community Cordova Plugin NFC. This will be shortly included in Alpha Anywhere. Right now, we have an older one that is called the PhoneGap.NFC, but this one has been forked and it is updated regularly. It works. We've tested it, and we're going to show you a demo of it in action at the end. We're actually coming up in just a minute. So this plugin, like I said, iOS, Android, it also works, I think, in Windows and things like that. And what you do is you basically are going to be doing some JavaScript. I know this looks scary, but this is all the JavaScript that was necessary to listen for a tag, look up the tag in the database, and then leap to that part of the database. This will be available eventually, or not too long, as a sample application. We'll give you the code and we'll show you the little bits that are necessary. Also, we have Chris here today if you'd like to ask him any questions about that as well. So that is the reading code. Then we had one for writing code, where you're just basically just writing. Again, this is just JavaScript, and this was embedded into a UX component that built up that comprised the inventory application. So I know that's scary looking at JavaScript code. Let's go take a look at an actual example where this JavaScript code is being used. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Chris. Hey, Chris, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Then you're gonna have to probably step me through on how to share my screen because I don't see it anywhere.
You will in a moment. A dialog box is going to appear.
Oh, show my screen.
There we go. I know you're always like, what's the button? The answer is there is no button. So Chris showed me this code the other day. This is very cool. This is a home inventory application. We're going to clean it up and actually maybe even publish it as a sample app to the Apple Store, but we'll make it available to you. So I'll let you take it away and tell me what you've built here.
So you're able to see my screen?
I sure can.
Okay, so this is a mirror image of my device that's sitting here, which unfortunately you can't really show that in this format.
Yeah.
But it's basically an inventory app for boxes where you contain a lot of different things. For example, this box contains tubing, and these are all the different types of tubings it contains. I go back here, we have bolts and the different types of bolts that we have in there.
Cool.
But so this is manually selecting, but I've taken it and I've created written NFC tags to basically go to the records. So this is a normal list box control from Alpha that I'm using here. And when I scan an NFC tag, which Dave just showed you the code, what's happening is I'm scanning it and I'm reading that tag, and then I'm telling it to go find this GUID and then open up that record. So right now I'm going to scan one tag. Probably can't hear it, but
I heard a little click, a little boop in the background. Yeah.
I'm going to do it again.
Fasteners.
Again.
And each time you scan, it opens up and shows you what's in that box.
Exactly. And here's the last one, electronics. So I'm gonna go back to, let's go back to here, and let's change the fax paper to instead be bolts. I know I did, actually I think I did bolts. Do Apple cables.
Okay.
So I'm gonna, it should say right tag. I'm gonna fix this. It's just
it's a typo. Okay, yeah.
You got a typo. So it should say right tag. So I'm gonna click that. And there's a different when you're doing this on iOS, I'll tell you the differences in a few. But here, let me just write the tag. So I'm gonna click right tag. Place phone on.
Pretend that says right tag at the top. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
What was that?
I said pretend that says right tag at the top.
Oh yeah.
Pretend you push that button. Okay, yep.
So with Android, it automatically is going to read this tag first. So I have code in here, the trap, if we're doing a write. So you're gonna hear it click.
Yep.
So I know that I'm on the tag at least. So because it just read the tag, now I'm gonna click OK to write the tag. Successfully wrote to the NFC tag, and I'm gonna click OK.
Cool.
I'm gonna come back here and let's say go to tubing. Just go to a different record, and I'm gonna click on the tag, and it brings us to Apple cables.
And you clicked on the tag.
So now
is there any way you can show us? I know you're using your device there to actually do that. Can you open up the camera maybe on your device just to show us the pictures of the different, show us what your desk looks like? Oh yeah, cool, thanks. So we're looking at spy cam here. Yeah. Open that up. Cool.
So, yeah.
Oh, okay. So it looks like we've got a sticker, we've got a pendant, and a couple more stickers.
A couple more stickers, yeah. So these are
your tags.
Stickers are from one type of tag, and these pendants, I bought a different type of tag, but I bought the pendants. It's a little cheaper. I believe you do this. You can do them separately. It's a little cheaper than the one Dave was showing in there in his slideshow. You can buy this pendant, the tag holders separately at a cheaper price, and get these also very cheap.
And stick them on. Yeah, sure.
Stick them on yourself. So this is a tag right here that I actually rewrote.
Cool.
So going back to the app, let's go back here. No, I opened up the same.
The other app, yeah.
Now, one difference between this running on iOS is iOS doesn't allow tags just to be read automatically. So unlike Android, which it will always read the tag, even if the app isn't running. It's built in that if it reads an NFC tag, it opens up its own app.
So like even as long as you've got the phone near an NFC tag, it can activate your Android phone and tell it to do something?
Yeah. It will read the tag. It won't do anything.
Okay,
it'll read the tag basically automatically. With Apple instead, you have to tell it to.
You have to prompt it. So you push a button which says scan or something like that, or.
So yeah, and in this application you don't see it here, but if I were running this on an iOS device, it would say read tag here or scan. I have a separate button here that's hidden in Android because it happens automatically, but it's not hidden if it was an iOS app. So
that's an interesting difference. Yeah,
that's about the main difference, because you're constrained by Apple. They just don't allow it to happen automatically, and there's no easy way. So basically, once you click that button, it opens Apple's NFC reader on your iPhone, and then you click, tap it. On my particular iPhone, you have to, unlike the Android, I'm putting the tag at like the top 1/3 of the phone, and that's where it's able to read the tag. With an iPhone, I have to basically tap the phone right here to the top of the tag. So right up here on the phone, I tap on it. If I just put the whole phone over it, it doesn't seem to work. So and it's like, but that's a safety issue. They don't want to give too much of an area. That's why I called near field communication. It doesn't want to give too much of an area. So you have to be specific when you're clicking, so that you don't accidentally, with an Android, so you don't accidentally read something that you don't want to read, or
gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Or have somebody bring you to their website and advertise on your device.
It could be used for nefarious reasons. You hear about that with QR codes being used for that. They're QR code, malicious redirects.
So I hope to have this published pretty soon. Like I said, it's a very simple app, but I'm using it right now for all mine.
So we have a question, and it's actually one I asked you before the call, which is NFC going to be available in alpha launch, or is that going to be the plan?
Yes,
excellent.
It'll be available. When I mentioned that I was doing it for alpha launch, there was from the
All of
alpha.
a sudden, people here in the Transform team were like, "Oh, for Alpha launch, can we get that in Transform?" So we should have it both places, which will be cool. In Transform, it'll be controlled by TPL, and maybe we'll have like a special control for it.
So I'm really pushing this through the ringer just to make sure. It spent a lot of time finding the correct plugin that seemed to work the best, was the easiest to write code to, and get it through the publishing process. Some of the older NFC tags or some of the old plugins haven't been kept up to date, and so basically, yeah, the original plugin for this wasn't kept up to date, but people find it so useful. They're forking it on GitHub and basically create.
This was forked like 10 months ago and has been updated a few times, I think, even since then. So it's so it's in good shape.
So
and we do that with our plugins. So if you do find something falls out of date, sometimes we've had to fork them and fix them ourselves.
We fix them ourselves. Yeah, exactly. That's what we have Bob for.
We got folks. Exactly. Great.
So that's pretty much
yeah, so wonderful. Hey, thanks very much. Pretty easy demo actually to show off. I read something on it, but looks really, really nice. Oh, the last question, someone said, "Is that Chris's house?" They said with question marks and exclamation points.
No.
They figured that you live under a bridge, I thought was the.
My wife and I are into Renaissance festivals and things like that, and this is an old medieval tavern. Cartoon drawing of a medieval tavern.
I've been to Chris's house. It looks a little like that. So,
not quite. But,
excellent. It doesn't look like there are any other questions today, but if you've got questions, send them into guides, guides@alphasoftware.com. There is one question here that I see about something about a feature key or something, but I'm just going to write back to you directly, Greg, and get clarification and help you out there. Again, guides, guides@alphasoftware.com is the email to use if you've got questions. And thank you very much for joining us. We hope to see you at our next Alpha Software demo and Q&A webcast. Take care. And thanks again, Chris, too. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.